Breaking news out of Myanmar this past week. After more than 500 days behind bars, 2 Reuters reporters have been released by the government. The men had been jailed for their investigation into the killing of 10 Rohingya Muslims by Myanmar security forces. News of their release was welcomed by journalists and activists around the world. In Myanmar, though, reporting the Rohingya story remains incredibly challenging. Since 2017, almost 750,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled to neighbouring Bangladesh, and Myanmar's government has been aggressive in its attempts to control the narrative. However, one network has been reporting the story from the inside, Rohingya Vision TV. Run by exiled Rohingya, the network relies on undercover reporters to get the information out. The stories that they tell contest the official state narrative, as well as the work of media outlets in Myanmar that have closed ranks with the authorities. The Listening Post's Johanna Hoos now on the perilous state of media freedom in Myanmar, and the news network telling the Rohingya story its way.
zulum goji tayar ki balagur habar yahi andara hen sayare man buzi hari to hon thagia rara to bishi bishi fayda kol duniyare jane phari duniyare hoy phari fayda kol utai phari
ko ara hendila sukore lotai to mane lona hadin বিশ্বাস না করে লতা দিন বিশ্বাস করি
What refugees like Nurul Mustafa, Bosir Ahmed and Mohamed Jubair say they have seen on the ground are acts of rape, torture, massacres of their own people at the hands of the Burmese security forces. Stories that journalists from Myanmar tend to shy away from. For the hundreds of thousands of refugees across the border in Bangladesh, Rohingya Vision TV, or Our Vision, provides news from a Rohingya perspective.
We started to get news, actual facts and figures from the ground, and I started to broadcast. So the ultimate goal was to tell the truth, to tell the Rohingya side of the story, and to advocate Rohingya plight, because Rohingya is underreported, Rohingya is misreported.
They're reporting that mass rapes have occurred, that there has been effectively a scorched earth campaign against the Rohingya. That, women and children have been executed along with men. Rohingya Vision TV helped to sort of counter this idea that it is just a targeted operation to weed out Rohingya militants. But they're of course branded as sort of brazen propaganda, and they've been targeted with relentless attempts to discredit them.
We saw at the start of the crisis Rohingya Vision TV very accurately reporting what was going on, the number of people that were fleeing, the scale of the violence. And that information wasn't used by international media at all, because there's been such a fuss made by the government of Burma about the reliability of Rohingya sources. And that's a loss, because they are getting information out on the ground in Rakhine State.
And that's significant. Myanmar's government has blocked all access to the region, turning Rakhine into a black hole for the news. Without access, international journalists have come to rely solely on refugees' accounts, while much of the Myanmar media run with the government's version of events. But Rohingya Vision still has eyes on the ground. According to its founder, Mohamed, the channel has a network of around 20 undercover citizen journalists working around the clock and at great risk to feed information from Rakhine, or Arakan as it's known in the Rohingya language, to their colleagues in Malaysia. Broadcasting in 3 languages, Our Vision operates primarily online through its YouTube channel. The network has become a primary source of the news for the Rohingya community, and its multiple platforms typically get more than 150,000 views per day.
Our vision is very unique, and it is the world first of its kind. International medias are not allowed here, so they cannot do their job. So now we have to take over the job. We are the newsbreaker of Arakan because we convert a citizen into citizen journalists, existing people into journalists, training them and getting the information out with whatever possible equipment they have.
It is very dangerous for the people on the ground that are doing this. The government want to shut this down, they want to stop information getting out, and so anyone who's found to be involved with Rohingya Vision TV would be in danger of being jailed or disappeared. They'll go after the people that are interviewed, they'll go after the fixer, as well as going after the journalists who are doing the reporting.
Those tactics aren't just applied to the Rohingya journalists operating in Rakhine. Ever since the start of the military crackdown in August 2017, the government of Aung San Suu Kyi has embarked on a far-reaching campaign to silence reporters, local and foreign. Intimidation, harassment, and the weight of the law have been used on journalists who cast the government or military in a bad light. Case in point, in December 2017, 2 Reuters reporters were arrested and charged under the Official Secrets Act, a law that dates back to the colonial era, for allegedly having illegally acquired information with the intention to share it with foreign media. Those documents, which supposedly contained information about mass graves in Rakhine, were in fact handed to them by the Myanmar police just minutes before they were arrested. This past week, Walon and Ja So-u were finally released, having spent more than 500 days behind bars. The journalists are now free, but critics remain suspicious over the circumstances of their arrest.
Those 2 reporters are very well respected. They're very dogged. Walon and Ja So-u and the Reuters teams and the AP teams in the country are known to be very courageous in their reporting on this issue. The government and the military and the police would want to silence them.
The 2 reporters were trying to expose something that the military, wanted to hide. What the 2 journalists did is the main reason that the government had detained them. They still use, a number of laws to detain journalists, and these laws are very useful for the government.
When Myanmar began the transition from military to civilian rule back in 2011, there was hope a space would open up for more independent reporting. That hope has since been shattered. Under Aung San Suu Kyi's rule, reporting critical of the authorities has all but disappeared, especially on issues relating to Rakhine. And it's not just due to government intimidation or self-censorship. When it comes to the Rohingya, most media outlets in Myanmar simply agree with the government line.
The vast majority of journalists, Burmese journalists inside the country, appear to share the government and the military's antagonism towards the Rohingya. Magazines or newspapers like the state-run New Light of Myanmar, which publishes very unsettling, antagonistic editorials and articles that allude to the Rohingya as, for example, human fleas. So regardless of whether there is space or there isn't space, there's a real lack of will in reporting critically on the military.
I think the local media try not to anger their audience, their readers. So they try to tread a very careful line, trying to balance, do their work, as well as not to make the readership unhappy. Because I think they understand that the majority of the people don't like this Rohingya people.
The government of Burma is trying to say, look, what can we do? We can't take action on Rohingya citizenship because the Rohingya are so hated within the country. But the government has used its media channels, newspapers and radio stations and television to encourage and whip up that fear and hatred of Muslims. So they create this crisis and then they use it as a defence for not being able to act on it. It's a tactic that they're using.
It's a tactic that is proving all too effective, which makes outlets like Rohingya Vision TV, a rare source of the news still operating behind the authorities' veil of secrecy, all the more important when trying to understand all sides of a story that the United Nations calls a textbook case of ethnic cleansing.